Please welcome the Vice President of Amazon Q Business at AWS, Dilip Kumar.
Good morning. Hope you're all having a good re:Invent. My name is Dilip Kumar, and I'm a Vice President in AWS, leading our Amazon Q Business suite of services. Imagine a future not so distant where 80% of the work that you're doing is automated, and the remaining 20% is at 100x quality. Last year, around this time, when we launched Q Business, when we announced it, we had 3 design tenets in mind that we felt were going to be durable over time. First, enterprise security and privacy was going to be very crucial for any of these types of workloads. Second, we felt that customers needed people who had the right permissions to have access to whatever data that they have permissions for in a much more unfettered way than what exists today. But not just have access to data, but also to be able to take actions on that data. And third, we wanted to be providing this assistance where people naturally work, rather than completely inventing a new way of working. We went generally available in May, and since then, the team has been on a tear, launching a whole host of features. We've launched 39 new major critical features to Q Business and the suite of services, and a whole host of other smaller ones. This is clearly resonating with customers across every industry that you can imagine. For use cases that you're also pretty familiar with, things like customer service, customer support, documentation use cases, but also some very interesting use cases and very esoteric ones that we would have never conceived, but it is largely due to the ingenuity of customers such as yourself trying to figure out how to make something like generative AI work to transform their businesses. Let me start with a customer example. Jabil, a well-known manufacturing company. It's a global company. It has offices in 25 countries around the world. And if you can imagine a company of that size, they probably have very interesting supply chain negotiating pricing challenges. And when you have people distributed all over the world, and when you have a supplier base which is all over the world, you need very quick access to the right information at the right time for the people who are making all of these crucial deals. Let's hear from Jabil as to how they used Amazon Q Business to help solve their problem.
We were actually among the first companies to pilot Amazon Q. We implemented at several European sites to start in order to enhance the productivity of our engineers, particularly in retrieving information for their daily tasks. The value was clear and immediately. With the great collaborations and partnership, the AWS and Jabil project team were able to develop Amazon Q in Jabil's environment within about 6 weeks. So the deployment provided our employees worldwide with access to over 1,700 policies, manufacturing specifications, and troubleshooting documents in various languages.
It's always great to hear from our customers. And in all of my conversations with customers, there's a few salient points that come up. One is almost every customer who's having success with generative AI started with something and a particular use case that was troublesome. They had a good baseline for it. They knew exactly how much time, money, resources that they were spending on it, so that they could do a very quick before and after comparison to be able to figure out whether they're getting ROI for that particular use case. And once they established that, they were able to expand to many, many different places. I've seen this pattern again and again and again. And a natural question that you probably all have in your mind is, well, how do I get started? Well, the answer is as simple as 1, 2, 3. Like, we wanted to keep it very easy for people to be able to onboard their data, take actions, and be able to access this everywhere, similar to the design tenets that I was talking about, which resulted in the creation of Q Business. Let's talk about onboarding. The first part of onboarding allows an administrator in a very simple 3-click process to be able to create a shell for the Q Business application. Once you've created the shell, we fork the process. And what tends to happen is that as soon as the shell is created, your users can start interacting with Q Business with their own personal documents, with any documents that people have sent to them in email. They can generate content, they can get summaries, they can get insights. So they are productive on day one when this is happening. While this is happening, on the other side, the administrators are actually ingesting company content. Company content is things like wikis and SharePoint and Confluence and your Google Workspace or any other documentation or support tickets, anything that administrators feel would be helpful for the particular use case that they're solving. And as this process can take a little bit of time, as this content is available, it gets used by the users who are already familiar with interacting with the LLM and Q Business to start with. We had some tailwinds when we were designing this. The first is that a lot of companies have trusted AWS with their data. So it was an easier process for them to be able to use the data in their existing accounts and to be able to ingest this process. This allowed us to be able to create the most built-in, managed, and secure connectors of any other generative AI assistant. These connectors help our customers create what we call the Q index. And this Q index points back to the first design thing that I was talking about, which is about security and privacy. One of the key tenets that we had when we were designing this is that enterprises were very particular about the ACLs and permissions of the specific users and what access patterns that they could or couldn't have. So anytime that we are ingesting content, we ingest it by respecting those permissions. So if you, as a user, did not have access to content outside of Q, you're not going to get access to it through Q either. And this has definitely resonated with enterprises across. But we know that data comes in many forms. Life is not so simple where you could say that, well, today's the day that I'm going to access data from databases and data warehouses and data lakes, and tomorrow's the day where I can worry about unstructured content from email and other kinds of sources. You have problems on a daily basis, and you want a reasonably unfettered access to your data wherever it resides. So we felt that it was a much better thing for us to take care of the undifferentiated heavy lifting and to be able to bring structured and unstructured data together. So we took two of our marquee products. We took Amazon Q Business, which was ingesting a lot of this unstructured data that I was talking about. And we took Amazon QuickSight, which is our cloud-native BI tool, which provides access to rich, structured data, visuals, dashboards, all of the things that users are very familiar with. And we said that, why not combine them? That way, a user can start a process or ask a question in Q Business and be able to get not only insights from unstructured data that Q Business was providing, but also rich visual content that is relevant to that query in QuickSight. You could do the same thing in QuickSight, and you could start the question, and QuickSight will now import all of the unstructured data that is relevant to that particular query that you're posing. No more cognitive load for the user as to where you start the process. Regardless of where you are, you have access to the data that is relevant to the query that you're posing. Kepler, a marketing agency, was able to use this, and they were able to see a phenomenal increase in the amount of time it took them to be able to get insights for their advertising campaigns that they were doing. They were spending 60 to 70% of their time in just data preparation and figuring out where to go for some of these sources. But by combining these two, they're getting a 10x increase in their advertising productivity. Swami announced earlier today that Amazon Q and QuickSight is in preview with scenarios. And the reason that we talked about scenarios is that a lot of what I've talked so far is about questions that people are posing and getting responses. But in a lot of instances, people also want to do scenario planning. They want to do a lot of what-if analysis. And traditionally, a lot of this analysis was relegated to spreadsheets. Somewhere out of the data, people had to cut and paste, copy and paste, get this data in there, formulate the queries, figure out what they needed to do. And now with Q and QuickSight scenarios, you can do all of this within QuickSight. Let's take an example through the lens of a user who might be going through a very similar process like this. Sam, she's a sales director, and one of the things that she has to do is, in addition to managing the team, she has to be able to set sales targets, she has to summarize sales pipeline details, as well as analyze her team performance. So let's see how she used to do her work before and what she does now. As a result of us combining these two, Amazon Q Business and QuickSight, she can just pose her queries in Q Business. Q Business will pull up the relevant information from her unstructured data, but it'll also combine the right things that she's looking for from QuickSight. She no longer has to go to multiple different sources to be able to pull that data. She doesn't have to go to a spreadsheet to be able to do this analysis. We combine all of this and make it very easy for her to do this. We talked about scenarios. Scenarios allows you to be doing what-ifs. You could have questions like, well, what if my customer retention rate was increased by 10%? What QuickSight does, it works behind the scenes with Q, and it figures out, based on your data, here's the question you asked, here are some other alternative questions that might be interesting, and it allows you to be able to pick and choose different scenarios. This is extremely powerful because most business analysis is not linear. People they go through one end, they go to a particular tree, then they come back, they ask other questions, they come back, ask a third question, and you want to be able to mix and match the answers and the visuals that is generating across all of this. And then very simply and very easily, what QuickSight allows you to do is to be able to just publish this as user stories and as executive summary. So no longer is Sam going through this process, or this cumbersome process of spending 80% of her time collecting and collating data. She can start her day in Q Business, get this entire insights, and be able to generate this on a regular basis. The second part of the thing that we talked about was taking action. Let me set the stage for the problem that we were trying to solve. Organizations generally have two broad categories of problems. They probably have many more problems, but I'll focus on two main aspects of it. The first one is that, imagine your typical day. Your organizations have multiple different purpose-built SaaS applications for different use cases. You have a CRM system for certain things. You have a system for ticketing. You have a system for project management. You have a system for incident management, and so on and so forth. And those are all excellent systems. They're purpose-built for a particular use case, but it also increases the cognitive load for any user to be able to go from one application to the other in order to do your job. And of course, there isn't necessarily uniformity across teams either. So different sets of teams may be using a variation of some of these things as it happens. So that's one class of problems. The other class of problems that tends to happen on a very regular basis is either on a daily, weekly, bi-weekly basis. People are used to sending some form of a report, status update, summary to somebody in their management chain or their teammates. And these are processes that are highly manual. They happen with a great amount of frequency. And there's ways and means that everybody has to go through this pain point again and again and again. So we thought about how are two different ways that we could solve both of these problems. Let's take a look at the first one. We created this notion called as actions. Actions allows you to be able to complete tasks in popular business applications, all from within Q Business. So say you want to update an Asana project, or you want to update or create a Jira ticket, or know any project that is flipping from a yellow to a red status, or know the list of things that are being assigned to you that are past a due date. All of those things required you to context switch and go to multiple different applications. But now you can do a variety of those actions without leaving Q Business. This is generally available today. We support more than 50+ actions. But the key point here is that because there is such a long tail of applications out there, one of the things that we also did was to be able to say that you should be able to bring your own actions. So we created a custom plugin that allows you, using APIs, to be able to bring your own actions to this, which extends those 50+ actions to a much, much larger set of actions. Now let's see how we tackle repetitive tasks. When we launched Q Business, we also launched something known as Q Apps. And let's assume that we're pulling together a weekly leadership report. And in this, we can say that, well, in this leadership report, I want you to create an executive summary. I want you to create a data table. I want you to pull some elements from this data table from 2 different sources. And then when you're done with this, I need you to send the results of this summary to this set of people. Using a conversation, you can create a very simple Q app with no code required that allows you to do exactly that, publish it. It now goes into a catalog. So now you're sort of going from improving your own productivity to improving team productivity, because as soon as this is published, anybody in your team can use a similar report, modify it for their particular use cases. So every week, if you are running this report, you no longer have to come in and actually start this process all over again. The report is already run with the most updated data. It's already been sent to somebody if it's based on the publication schedule. And no longer do you have to start this process. This is a simple way for people to be able to create anything that requires a level of automation. And once you've created this Q app, it is effectively serving as an agent on your behalf that is executing a series of tasks on a particular schedule with a certain set of results that you need to be published. Again, No specialized tech skills required. It is completely like no code at all. You just describe the app that you want built, and you can share applications with the organization. So we talked about individual productivity. We've talked about team productivity. There's another class of problems that tend to sort of happen on a slightly more enterprise scale. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine a line of business which has a plethora of use cases that they need to do. It could be in hospital procurement, it could be inventory management, it could be project approvals, it could be anything that you can imagine. Line of businesses have a variety of different things that they do on a manual basis again and again and again. They rely on central IT to be able to build some of these automations, and a lot of work gets done by central IT to be able to automate things across line of businesses. But in almost every organization and every company that I've spoken to, there is a laundry list of things that go below the line that don't allow line of businesses to be able to get to the level of automation necessary as they would crave. What tends to happen? Because it's just because something is below the line doesn't mean that the work doesn't exist. It requires a lot of manual effort by the people in that organization, which hampers productivity. So where did that leave us? In July, at the New York Summit, we announced App Studio, and it just went generally available in like 2 weeks ago on 11/18. And App Studio is the simplest possible way that you can build enterprise applications. You can create an intelligent, secure, scalable business app in minutes instead of days. And you can use natural language prompts to be able to describe the app that you want built. And once you can pull the UI elements that you need, you can construct the app, you can edit the app using natural language time and time again. And it follows all the security and governance that typically plagues low-code applications, which endears it to IT administrators because there is no longer this notion of shadow IT, of something that is just orphaned out there. I'll give you a very quick example, and then I want to bring Brooke on the stage to be able to talk a little bit more about this. The Amazon transportation team tends to match supply and demand to be able to figure out that they have full truckloads being sent out to wherever destination that they need to go. But again, right around Christmas, this time, supply seldom matches demand. Truckloads are not full. And so they have an exception process. They have an exception process and a prioritization process to determine which truck should be filled, which package should go where. As you can imagine, this requires judgment. It requires multiple levels of approval. It is cumbersome, it's manual, and it happens on a constant basis again and again and again, and time is of essence. This wasn't one of those things that they got automated, so the team took it upon themselves when we launched App Studio to build it, to build an app. So they built a very simple app that allowed them to be able to take the specifications of this exception process and create an app that they were able to share with them. There's 2 points that I want to highlight about why this was important. The first one was it took them a fifth of the time to be able to build this relative to what they would have normally done had they sort of sent it to central IT or the technical team that was supporting them. This is not a knock on the team. It's just a prioritization of when it would get done. So now you have people in a line of business they're not software engineers. It's not no code, but it is a limited amount of software that allows them to be able to build a very powerful app very quickly. But the more important thing was that as soon as they built it, they were able to save 80 hours a week almost instantly. That kind of ROI really drives home the point that you can have many more people in the fold building these things and no longer have to rely on a central resource, which will inevitably get backlogged for a variety of reasons. I want to bring Brooke out now, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about how App Studio works.
Managing complex business systems often requires custom applications. Today, I'll show you how AWS App Studio enables technical professionals to build these without requiring deep coding skills. Let's create an IT equipment inventory app. Watch as I describe our app needs in natural language. I'm typing a request for a multi-page app to track IT equipment, including item details, status, and repair history. Now, I'm clicking Generate App. In under a minute, App Studio creates a fully functional application with user interface, a data model, and business logic. Let's enhance it further. I'm adding an AI-powered feature to analyze repaired documents. I'll type a description to upload and summarize repair notes, extracting key insights automatically. With one click to confirm, App Studio adds this Gen AI component, significantly reducing manual effort for our team. Need customization? App Studio's intuitive drag and drop canvas makes it easy. I'm adjusting the dashboard layout and adding a card to visualize trends. Security is crucial. Let's set up some role-based access. I'm adding an approver role, ensuring the right people see the right pages and data. Now, let's connect to some existing systems. App Studio offers seamless integration with over 200 AWS services. I'm selecting connectors for DynamoDB and S3 to link to our inventory data. We can also integrate with external tools. Here, I'm connecting to Salesforce via API to display customer information alongside our inventory and repair data. Before deploying, let's customize the app's themes to match our brand. I'm adjusting the colors and adding our logo to match our style guidelines. Testing is just as simple. With one click, I'm deploying to our staging environment. App Studio handles the entire process, ensuring our app is secure and scalable. In just a few minutes, we've built an intelligent, secure, and scalable business application without writing a single line of code. This shows how App Studio can streamline application development for various technical roles, from IT project managers, data engineers, enterprise architects, to solution architects tailored to their organization's needs. Back to you, Dilip.
Thank you, Brooke.
Thanks.
Caught it. The handoff. As you can see, one of the things that we're sort of doing is allowing you to be able to build these intelligent systems rather than just having very simple piece parts. The third leg that I wanted to talk about is this notion of being able to access assistance where you need it. And why is this so important? This is important because businesses don't live in a silo. Different applications and systems that are core to how you operate. So when we designed Amazon Q Business, we said that people need the flexibility to be able to use this assistance wherever they're currently working, whether it be through an API or to be through a UI. For example, we've done this for ourselves. Our sales team uses this to be able to analyze accounts, figure out as to how to, like, which accounts are trending, which accounts aren't trending poorly, which accounts are trending well, so that they can actually have a very good conversation with customers on how to help them. But one of the problems with this was that in the current situation that they had prior to this, they were spending more than 50% of their time on administrative tasks and not actually helping customers. So they started using Q Business to be able to create a simple way for them to be able to consolidate all of this information and not do any of that undifferentiated heavy lifting. Let's hear from Joe.
I started using Amazon Q Business while it was in beta. Even in its early state, it quickly provided us a way to onboard our sales enablement content and deliver a conversational experience without needing to build or manage complex infrastructure or data processing pipeline. We've estimated that roughly 53% of time saved on administrative tasks and meeting preparation. It's really easy to use Amazon Q Business because it manages so much for us. From the infrastructure to picking a vector database, building a semantic search implementation, and all the connectors to data sources like relational databases and Amazon S3. We're also seeing a higher volume of sales opportunities generated by our sellers, higher quality customer interactions, and sellers are telling us that they're quickly devising action plans to bring to their customers that they otherwise would have missed with traditional methods. It's really been a game changer for us.
But as we know, you don't really work in one silo or the other. you could be working in a browser, and you could be analyzing multiple documents. These documents could be in a single tab. They could be in multiple tabs. So we built a browser extension. It allows you to be able to get assistance exactly where you're working. It can incorporate enterprise knowledge as well as personal knowledge with your uploaded documents, as well as allowing you to be able to analyze stuff that across multiple files, change the content, as well as generate content. But we didn't stop there. When we first launched Amazon Q Business, ISVs came to us, and there were two variants of ISVs that were there. Like, enterprises were very interested in this product, but ISVs also had a very unique interest in it. The first category of ISVs said that, well, we have a popular product that is out there to millions of users, but we want to be able to get some way to be able to get this assistance or Amazon Q as an assistant in our application. So we created an embedded version of Amazon Q that allows them to be able to embed all of the functionality of Q Business into their application. It allows them to be able to change the UI, the look and feel, the branding, so that it doesn't look like it's a bolt-on, that it is actually natively built into their particular product. This sounds simple, but it was actually a lot easier because there's a lot of complexity in the way that ISVs manage their UI. So the ability and the flexibility for us to be able to do UI embedding as well as API access to very specific things really resonated with them. There's another variant of ISVs who had an assistant already in their application, but they wanted to be able to figure out, say, how can we enrich that assistant that they already have with the data that Q Business has? Let's take a look at this.
Employees often juggle various tools, spending more time searching for content than solving problems. While many software providers add generative AI features, these are often confined to their own apps, creating data silos that miss crucial context from other sources. The Amazon Q Cross-App Index securely unifies relevant content and context from over 40 software applications and data sources. Using this index, software vendors can create generative AI features directly in their applications or web pages that incorporate relevant context from other applications.
This Amazon Q Index, which is available today, offers ISVs the ability to be able to take the data that Q Business has and to be able to enrich their content with specific things. Just like we've discussed, as work happens across multiple applications, ISVs were eager to be able to figure out as to how to help their users get a much more broader context of the data that they needed to be able to make decisions versus the data that they just had access to. Let's take an example for how Zoom is using this.
Let's join a Zoom meeting with Leah, Lindsay, and Rocco. As the call begins, Zoom's AI companion assists by summarizing the meeting and answering in-meeting questions. Because this team chose to use the AI companion with the Amazon Q Cross-App Index, it not only summarizes the meeting, but automatically surfaces the Atlassian Jira ticket and Google document Leah references in the conversation. The Cross-App Index respects user-level permissions across connected apps, ensuring documents, messages, and data used in generated responses are based on what users can already access. Without leaving Zoom, the team quickly connects on the project status, finds relevant content, and makes an informed decision. Applications like Asana, Miro, Zoom, and PagerDuty are also using the index from Amazon Q Business to enhance their generative AI experiences. Enhance your generative AI features today with the Amazon Q Cross-App Index.
Other ISVs like Miro, a collaborative whiteboarding solution, they use the Q Index to be able to increase team collaboration. So when the user asks the Miro AI a question, the generated results from Miro also pulls in results from Google Workspace, Atlassian Confluence, or Slack. Let's review one more. Asana, a project management tool. Asana is an enterprise project management platform, and it makes it easier for people to be able to manage very complex projects. So when you're managing a very cross-functional project, you need to be able to make sure that all the relevant information is positioned and presented to the user in the right way. So when a customer asks Asana for a particular question, they are not only getting answers from Asana's AI, but they're also getting from sources like Outlook, your Google Workspace, and your Slack. The combination of the embedded use case and the combination of the Q Index use case being used in ISVs is now rapidly getting adopted by many ISV providers, largely because they see the utility of how data can be augmented to be able to help their own AI as well as their own ISV applications get a lot more powerful for customers. Today, ISVs can integrate with the Amazon Q index. It has that fine-grained permission capabilities that are fully controlled by the end user. So like whatever specifics you want to have exposed to the ISVs, you tend to control it. And the access controls works across each app, so it doesn't have to be the same for all of them. You can sort of choose per app. I now want to bring out our panel to talk about like specific things about how they're using generative AI for their customers as well as their employees. Good morning. Thank you for being here. It's just about good afternoon at this point. Mike, we're going to start with you. Why don't you start with some introductions, and then we'll go right into it.
Sure. I'm Mike O'Rourke. I work at NASDAQ, and I lead up our AI and Emerging Technology division.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Rajendra Prasad, known as RP. I am the Global CIO for Accenture.
Hi, I'm Alex Hood. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Asana.
Well, thank you all for being on the panel. Mike, I want to start with you. So how is NASDAQ thinking about generative AI, and specifically, what led you to choosing Amazon Q?
Sure. So at NASDAQ, we think that generative AI has the ability to really change how people work in all areas of the company. And so about a year ago, when we looked to create the NASDAQ Generative AI platform, we said, how do we get engagement from all of our users, all of our employees involved, not just our engineers, but we do need a platform that's powerful enough for them, but easy enough that we can get everyone involved. And so what we chose to do is create a high-code version of Skills, where that's backed by Amazon Bedrock, and a no-code version that employees can create that's backed by Amazon Q. And so in August, we launched this platform to our employees, and the response has been pretty overwhelming, and the feedback has been great. We've had thousands of people use the platform. We have had hundreds of skills or AI applications that were created. And kind of the thing that we didn't expect was that most users chose to use our no-code Amazon Q-backed version of the platform. They liked the fact that they could just, within a few minutes, click, create a skill, upload their documents, connect it to the data repositories, and be speaking to their data in just a few minutes. So I would say the large majority of our users actually choose that version.
That's actually super fascinating, is that you would have thought that more developers would be in there. This is generative AI is truly sort of bringing in a class of builders that wouldn't have naturally categorized themselves as builders, if you will.
Yeah, there's a lot of demand there from those non-engineers to actually interact and have these tools and capabilities.
Right. Alex, what is Asana's long-term vision for generative AI, and how is Q bringing that vision to life?
Yeah, thank you. Asana solves the problem of work about work. When I say that term, a lot of people sort of smile knowingly. That is the 60% of the time that we spend at work trying to figure out what's going on. Status reports, status meetings, trolling through email, looking through spreadsheets. There's a better way. So the best teams, the best performing teams have 3 sets of tools. A place where their content lives, that's like Microsoft 365. A place where they communicate, that's chat and email. And then there's the coordination layer, the connection, that's Asana. That's who's doing what by when, up, down, and across the organization. Asana accomplishes that mission because it has a graph database. That's a single source of truth of who's doing what by when. But enter Amazon Q, that graph, that information about what's actually happening in the organization can be greatly enhanced if it is supplemented with the unstructured data that lives in the other 2 tool sets. So when we get that unstructured data to be tied into the graph, then the answers that you get in Asana, the context that you get in Asana is much more holistic.
Yeah, that's actually super useful. And do you feel that your users are able to sort of navigate this and intuitively and understand it?
Yes, yeah. There's more of an expectation now that applications are looking across. It's become more of the standard. Also, I think AI has actually helped bring this to life, because humans and AI suffer from the same problem. When they don't have context, they can't do the job well. So AI is better when it has more context to bear.
Yeah, that's just a really good point. RP, you have a very interesting viewpoint and Accenture that you tend to work with a lot of different companies. You also have a very large employee base, which is using, which can very benefit a lot from generative AI. So how are you thinking about generative AI and specifically Q, especially on some of the cybersecurity work that we were talking about earlier?
Thank you for that question. Like you said, we implement generative AI and all of the technology in large complex workforce we have internally, which is close to 770,000 people across the globe. Plus all our employees, all our people talk to our clients on a day-to-day basis, and we do systems work, software engineering, cloud. Like, we completed our cloud journey in 2019. We are 100% on cloud. So all our systems run on cloud. That helps us to build this strategic workforce, workbench type of concept where we take Q as a key aspect to implement and help all the work activities that we do, be it in software engineering, systems engineering, cloud aspects, or DevSecOps, anything that you do, and all our industry and functions, like, be it supply chain, order to cash, how you can apply Q there. We put that expertise in the workbench, and we help all our employees to leverage that on a day-to-day basis to implement Gen AI in every action that we do.
Yeah, I'll stick with you for a follow-up question for that. Like, how are you thinking about agentic AI specifically when it comes to Accenture and in the specific things that you're talking about?
So agentic AI, like everyone in the industry now, there is this philosophy that all your apps in future will become agents, and beyond that, you'll have thrice to 4 times the agents in your devices compared to the apps that you have today. How we are implementing agents? An agent and agentic architecture needs to help in 4 layers. I'm going to go through each layer. Layer 1, for every individual person, every individual employee, we call it person-based agentic architecture powered by Q, right? Person agentic. Then each of our employees are part of a team. So we built generative AI and how you can apply agentic solution in a team construct. Let's say you are doing agile sprint planning, a very simple example, how you can use. You're putting up a solution to cloud transformation, how you can do. You're putting a strategic roadmap to transform an insurance company or a bank or a retail, how you do that. So in a team setup, how you can do Q. Third thing comes enterprise knowledge and cognitive brain powered by Q. So person, team, enterprise. Once you complete these 3 layers, all of you follow sovereign cloud and the government data and the public data that we have there. Each country has this massive data that can help to power generative AI agentic architecture to help the countries specifically at a country level. So individual to team to enterprise to the geography level at country level is how we put a strategy to drive the agentic implementation.
That's super interesting. It's the first time I've actually heard of the country level Q. I mean, that could have fascinating implications for it. Alex, as the work management company, I'm assuming you have more than an opinion on how agents would influence work in the future.
Right.
What's your take on it?
I think there's 2 implementations of AI that are not working as well as they could, and there's one that is working well. The 2 that aren't working as well is, number 1, a lot of us experience AI through a chat interface. And we all lose patience very quickly when that chat interface returns results that are not expected or not that good. And then there's a lot of drop off.
Yep.
Second is there are more and more builders of workflows out there, and multi-step processes are currently not done particularly well with AI yet. We think that, though, the way we talk about AI at Asana is it's AI teammates. These AI teammates live inside workflows, and they take very specific tasks, very specific scopes. You give them very specific instructions, and you put the human in the loop. And that is the best recipe for success.
Yeah.
breaking down the work and having AI do some very specific work along the way instead of just asking to do it all at once, so it's kind of a failure state.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, is to be able to like amplify a team's productivity with like AI teammates.
Yeah, and what we're seeing is it's not reducing team size, it's actually just making the team faster and better.
Yeah, more productive. Michael, I'm sure the audience would love to hear some user success stories that you've had in NASDAQ, because you've been doing some very amazing work on that using Amazon Q.
Sure. So, within generative AI, we've had a lot of luck in the places where you would think we would, with developer productivity, help desk support, marketing, those type of things. But where Amazon Q has really helped us is that it's helped us foster more innovation and find areas for innovation that maybe we wouldn't have thought of. Back right before we launched our internal platform, we had this idea that we would perhaps hold a hackathon for people to hack on the platform and come up with new generative AI ideas. And we hold hackathons all the time, as companies do. But what was novel with this is that usually that's a very engineering-focused thing. And here we said, what if we just make it a hackathon challenge for the entire company, and we can include everyone to participate? And so it was kind of the first time that we had done this, where like everyone can be involved here. You don't have to have any coding skills. And so we did this right before the launch of the platform, and people really were into this. At the end, you got a lot of engineers involved, but then we also got a ton of people outside of engineering, and they uncovered some areas that we wouldn't have thought of. I think 80% of the skills that were created during the hack were actually from non-technologists, non-engineers.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Like, I would have, I don't think that's it's worth reiterating that. Like, when you're saying hackathon, and then you find 80% of the things that are built or come out of it, with whatever level of utility that come out of it, were from people who weren't proficient in being able to write software. It's truly a new class of builders.
Yeah, and so we had a few successes there. Like, I'll say, like, things that I wouldn't have thought of personally. Our tax office, for instance, they like uploaded local tax documents to understand the implications to different areas and regions in our business. The legal team got involved. They used it to upload regulations and say, okay, what products and processes do we need to change based on this regulation?
Yeah.
So these are areas that maybe we wouldn't have thought of in technology, like, oh yeah, that's where we can deploy generative AI, but we're able to do that.
Yeah, I think I was alluding to this in the App Studio, where like line of businesses are very familiar with their pain points, and you don't have to grin and bear it anymore. There are ways and means out of it to be able to do something. With the barrier to be able to start, to be able to improve, is a lot lower than it used to be, which is super interesting. I'll stick with you with this, because this is another question that comes up routinely, and I'm sure the audience is interested in it. As you went about these programs and these projects and the kinds of things that you're doing, how are you thinking about quantifying the value and the ROI that you would get from these things?
We've got a few ways that we do this. During the hackathon, actually, it's kind of interesting that we made the crucial piece that you had to present in order to win was that you had to present exactly what the value was of the skill that we were creating, this AI skill that you're creating. So how much efficiency is gained, and it had to be in a dollar amount. So for instance, if this saves 5 minutes every day for 200 people, what does that equate to in dollars? And so they had to put the business case there, and it really started getting people thinking about that. And what was interesting is that, like, once you had that, right? Normally you have a hackathon, and maybe some of those ideas make it, but a lot of them don't, and it's because they have to come up with a business case.
Right.
But here they're able to actually quantify the value, and then they can bring that to their business team, and they say, oh, this is something that I can actually see the dollars that this is worth, and go after that. So we put that into the platform. As people are creating skills, they can put what they believe that the efficiencies are that are gained, and then we have the engagement metrics, and we can see, okay, they believe that they're getting this amount of efficiency per user or per request, and we can see exactly how many users and how many requests are going on within the system to get an idea for really what is the value that's providing.
And what about you, Alex? Like, how are you sort of thinking about quantification and like from Asana's point of view?
Yeah, well, the very nature of Asana is that you are tracking initiatives and running workflows in Asana, and it has a reporting suite already inside.
Right.
So as soon as work gets accomplished, either by a human or by a bot, we're tracking that change, and there's already dashboards configured around workflow efficiency. So that kind of comes for free.
Right.
When we've been working with some initial customers with Asana AI, we've been just really diving in to do a pre-post analysis with them. An example is Morningstar. We added one AI agent to one of their workflows, which triaged the incoming IT project requests. Used to take a couple weeks, now it takes a couple days. And that is a savings of $750,000 for them in a year. And they have 20,000 employees who are adding projects all the time to their IT backlog. And when you can quantify something like that, that kind of gives us then the right to go further inside the customer and build more and more workflows because the savings is so interesting. So it's almost like it's instrumented in Asana, but then you can co-create with the customer, and that's where we're getting the most value.
That's great. RP, as an SI, you have a very interesting lens of how you sort of think about quantification, both whether it be internal or for your customers. How are you all how do you sort of rationalize those two?
So for internally, we have what we defined as a 360 value meter. It has many components in it. I'll go through that in a bit. But primarily on the AI investment, and when we talk to our clients, primary measurement that we use, we came through some research reading, and we call it as AI Vibrancy Index. AI Vibrancy Index has X1, X2, X3, X4 parameters that goes in skill, data readiness, responsible AI component, investment dollars, and the value that you are generating out of that. And the other side of Y1, Y2, Y3 is how much revenue you are generating, what's the sales opportunity, is it a new business dollar. When you put together, it is just not cost efficiency optimization, but how you're creating your new business more vibrant, leveraging AI. That's kind of a new measurement technique that we use, which is part of our 360 value meter. That is essentially customer sat and how you are getting business benefits combined to all of the parameters that I just spoke about. That's kind of how we measure. It finally gives you what's the input of the dollars, what's the new business opportunity, by taking care of all other key parameters that impacts, influences, and has to be integrated into this measurement technique that I talked about.
That's super interesting. Last question to all of you. I'll start with you, RP. What's next for Accenture, and how can Q help get to the next set of things that you're looking at?
This is very important. Any enterprise, if you apply AI, Gen AI as a point solution, the benefit is just incremental. But if you use generative AI Q capabilities as an innovation tool, it influences innovation to reinvent your current processes to new business processes, then apply AI, Gen AI, and Q, the benefits are dramatic. So all of the enterprises has to move from an incremental focus and applying point solution to a dramatic transformation using AI, Gen AI as your innovation enabler or innovation tool. Don't apply just like that. Reinvent current process to the new process. Today we are working on all our corporate functions, internally HR, legal, finance, everything to reinvent the current way of operating to a completely new way, then infusing generative AI solutions and Q services into that.
That's awesome. I've actually heard this from multiple companies time and time again, is that the amount of value that they can get by just bolting on generative AI on their existing things is meaningful, but it'll taper. And so being able to try to figure out a new way of doing things, it might actually have a higher ceiling, even though it maybe take a little longer to be able to get there. Michael, what about you? What's next for NASDAQ? You guys are pretty far along on this race anyway, but I'm curious.
Yeah, if you think of a lot of the effort that we've had now is really to get our data, connect our data with these models. much of it using Amazon Q, and allowing users to ask questions and speak to the data. And our focus now is really now turning to how do we add these agentic workflows where we can actually kick off tasks and actions within the workflow to automate and really take our productivity for those workflows to another level.
Yeah. Last but not the least, Alex, how are you thinking about Asana's next set of frontier and how Q can help with that?
Well, we've all talked about tasks and actions. And we have built a platform where tasks and actions occur.
Yeah.
So we predict that in the next 5 to 10 years, that compute costs for AI will start to rival payroll costs as AI takes on more and more work. And we want to be the place where you discover new skills and capabilities that AI can take on as an AI teammate along the way to help out your team. And we can be the interface where that teamwork between AI and humans can actually occur in a structured place where workflows, goals, and strategic planning all occurs.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you all for being awesome customers as well as partners. And it's fascinating to see how you all are using Amazon Q and other technologies to be able to transform, both not just for within your company, but also for your customers. It's truly fascinating. Please, a big round of applause for our panel. Thank you all. So we've talked about 2 or 3 different things in this idea about how do you sort of accelerate onboarding, how do you take actions, and how can this thing be available everywhere where your users are working. And we look at this from the lens of a 3-layer. And the first layer is about the foundation. The foundation is about how do you get your users to have the right access to the data that they need in a very unfettered way. We talked about structured and unstructured. We talked about how security is supremely important for it, as well as the analytics that your administrators need on how this product is being used. The next layer is all about the actions and the kinds of things that you're doing, where how can you sort of do actions in third-party systems, in other popular applications, or applications that you're using in your enterprise, as well as being able to create these Q apps that allows you to be able to convert that into an agent that can act on your behalf. And of course, the top layer is the things that we talked about is where do people get assistance? Well, it is wherever they are working. There's 2 other things that I want to talk about which are super interesting, and Matt alluded to one of them, which is the idea of how do you get a workflow to happen and organizations have very complex business workflows for a variety of different things that they're doing. It could be invoice processing. It could be things on being able to download resumes in the HR department, or things in the legal department, or tax, as the case was, as Michael was talking about. And in all of these scenarios, these workflows, they're either cumbersome to set up, they're hard to maintain, and when your business naturally changes, it also has this issue of being able to not be able to keep up, and it is brittle and it breaks. So one of the things that we did was to be able to say that, like, how can we extend Q Business to radically rethink how enterprise workflows happen in the first place, and to be able to build it in a way that allows you to be able to navigate websites, allows you to be able to upload a particular process document. And then once you upload the process document, you can create a set of workflows and a set of steps that allows you to see exactly what the agent is doing on your behalf. Once you're satisfied with the agent, you can move on. And there's a bunch of customers who are already using the Q Business automation today as we speak for very, very interesting and unique use cases that they have. The last thing I want to talk about is this idea of, as powerful as Amazon Q Business is today, we're barely scratching the surface of what's possible. And the thing that interests me and excites me a lot about is the idea that work happens in teams. Teams generally have constraints on schedule, pressure, competing priorities. And while teams are reasonably efficient, they're not necessarily as efficient as they need to be. And one of the things that I'm very interested in and very excited about, and which is right around the corner, is the idea, and Alex mentioned to this with this notion of an AI teammate, is that if every teammate is equipped with a set of agents that can perform a set of tasks on their behalf, you are no longer restricted by the constraints that a team has. You can actually have a lot more amplification of your team's capabilities. In this scenario, you have an intelligent orchestrator that is deciding how to decompose any business problem assign it to the right agent, have the agents collaborate with each other, ask the human for an audible when they need input and specifications necessary, and then being able to keep processing until they can iteratively solve the problem. This goes back to what I started the presentation with, is the notion of this is the thing that allows you to be able to get 80% of your work automated, and the other 20% at a much 100x quality level. Whenever we talk about a 10x or a 100x employee, the general tendency that comes to our mind is that of an engineer. And while generative AI is definitely going to transform a lot of engineering workloads and the way that we fundamentally write software, the idea of a 100x business employee is definitely not just possible, it is going to happen. And this is going to not just have, this is not about automation, this is not about productivity, this is more about amplification. It's also about sort of user satisfaction on the specific things that they're doing. So to conclude, one of the things that I want to leave you with is the idea that you should get started, if you haven't already, and almost everybody, I feel, has already started and is going down multiple different avenues. Choosing a particular use case where you believe you have a very good sense of what the baseline or the ROI is so that you can compare the before and after is very valuable. And I'm thrilled to be participating and working with you all on how you can transform your businesses with generative AI. Thank you for listening.